Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and today I'm joined by Pernell Cezar into the studio, the founder of Blk Bold. Pernell, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me, man.
So before we get started, have you subscribed, everyone listening? If you want to hear from great Iowans, you need to subscribe to the show. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much everything. You want to get one new guest a week and learn cool stuff, you got to subscribe. So Blk Bold is not an old company. What I was completely clueless on this topic, and I think a lot of listeners may be with me on that. Describe what actually makes a premium coffee. I mean, I've been to Starbucks for years. I thought Starbucks was like premium coffee, but it's not, is it?
I wouldn't say it's not. There's tiers to what is deemed premium. And at the end of the day, premium is all about perception. So if you love what you love and you think it's a quality of what you enjoy, then it's definitely premium to you. I think the one point of clarification that is, for those that aren't in coffee, I mean, I'm not from coffee per se. My background isn't in the coffee industry, so I learned a lot of this by getting into Blk Bold. But when you look at the different segments of coffee, one of the key ones is called specialty coffee. Mm-hmm. And it's a fact-based term. So all coffee...
It's a what-based term?
Fact-based.
Got it. Okay,
yep.
Okay. Right.
Yep. And so all coffee is graded on a score of 0 to 100. And, there's these, dedicated career folk, professors of coffee, basically called Q graders. And they're the ones that are in charge of basically the scoring process. And so any coffee that scores 80 to 100 is deemed specialty coffee.
Okay.
And so that's the fact-based aspect of it. And then from there, of course, 80 to 100 is a pretty big range in itself. And so when you think about Starbucks, they offer specialty coffee for sure. They don't lean heavily on, we are the specialty coffee purveyors, but they are in specialty coffee. And again, the range between 80 to 100 can vary based off of what they offer, but also, what they offer on the everyday menu, and then also what they rotate out. But there's a lot of newer than Starbucks coffee businesses that lean very heavily on educating what specialty coffee is and the transparency of helping everyday consumers understand what that means for, one, the education of, but also the taste and experience of.
I think a lot of people think of, when you talk about the point system, wine. So exactly. Is this similar? Like, is it? It's obviously not the same, but is this a similar idea?
It's a very similar idea. I mean, there's a lot of crossover from the scoring, the quality of, the integrity of the wine that you drink, and how the grapes are harvested and so on and so forth. And I can't even pretend to be a wine connoisseur more so than I am on coffee. But when you think about the correlation over to coffee being basically a harvested crop, right? Coffee beans are the pit of coffee cherry plants that are processed a certain way and then roasted a certain way. And if they all fall within specialty coffee, you're creating very unique quality experiences from that. Just like a wine, when you look at the spectrum of wine offerings, it's the same type of deal on coffee. It's just not the way that everyday coffee consumers have been trained on coffee, at least in America.
Yeah. So the first time I ran into you, you were doing a little at a co-working space here in Des Moines, Iowa, which is where you guys are based, by the way. You were doing a little kind of educational thing to benefit our co-working space because we had Blk Bold and we bring it out occasionally. They switch it up. And I went to your session thinking, okay, I assume I know quite a bit in this area. But this is interesting. And I had your coffee and it was absolutely amazing. I thought they just changed, when I first had it, I'm like, whoa, did they double up the current coffee we had? No, it was just your stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, there's something I need to know. And so I went, and it blew my mind. Everything I thought I knew about coffee was basically wrong. And I've talked about coffee on the show in the past. So it was absolutely fascinating. That's where I heard about all this. But you're not that old. Like I alluded to earlier, Blk Bold's under 2 years
Under
old,
2
right?
years. Yep.
2 years old. And I'm going to get into how fast you guys grew. But first, where were you before this? Because you say you're not a lifelong coffee guy. I mean, you're probably a lifelong drinker. But, where were you before this? And why on earth did you go into such what I think is a crowded market?
Yeah, very, very much so. And I think to the common eye, it's very much a crowded market. So for my background, I have a co-founder as well. But for my background in particular, I started my career in retail merchandising with Target headquarters, helping, manage inventory across their entire supply chain, making buying decisions on what products are going to be carried, and then also negotiating with large packaged goods companies all the way to startup companies and helping them get a foothold in the retail, and with the intention of having successful brands from that point forward.
Sure.
And then and that was about half of my career prior to, and then the other half was with building supplier business development. So I went on the other side of the table and helped build a brand across the U.S. for mass distribution. And so mainly in health and beauty space was my background. And along this journey from my career, coffee's always been a part of I always say my adult career. I've been fueled by coffee. The nature of corporate America with how many meetings you have, and part of the Target culture, ironically, is they call informal get-togethers. Let's have a coffee. Right? And so that's been thematic in my background, and then also with moving over to the supplier side and business development and traveling all over the U.S. all the time. Most of my meetings, most of my, idle time was spent in coffee shops. So I was just immersed around coffee as a consumer in many different ways. And part of my journey with the businesses that I supported also is because I believed in their purpose and their mission. Target being a big company that gives 5% of their profits back to community initiatives. Sundial brand, Shea Moisture, being an emerging naturals product brand. They have such a foothold in supply chain, social impact. They have a model that they've coined called community commerce, and that's around the entire ecosystem and how they better that ecosystem. And being a part of those businesses and wanting to be the best owner I could be, knowing that entrepreneurship was a gateway to influencing what I wanted to see be a change in business.
Yeah.
One of the gaps that I always had was just not seeing communities like Gary, Indiana, that I'm from, get any sustainable support from for-profit businesses. Most of the models around supply chain versus how do you build a better community for your consumers. And so this whole connectivity between wanting to have something that was tangible back to consumer communities, but then also living and breathing in coffee shops and living and breathing and drinking coffee.
Yeah.
It just came fairly common sense that with the product that I spend a lot of money on, I'm passionate about, how do I, allow this product to bring more people into what coffee does is unite people around something that's just as low hanging as the communities that consume coffee already or that are surrounded by coffee already, and allow us to actually benefit future of these communities.
See, I see this theme a lot with founders like yourself who rise through the ranks really quickly. Is their commonality is this sense of very deep purpose, and I think that sense of deep purpose gives people superhuman strength to be able to cut through the crap and defeat enemies and get through all the noise. That seems to be the common thread. People that go after something just for a business sense, there's money to be made here. It seems like they don't do as well. But people who go after the business case, the passion, and the sense of purpose seem to be able to cut through really, really quickly. In that process, though, pitching it and working hard, I got to know, did you get any of the get out of here, no one wants more coffee, this is saturated, we don't want to hear from you? Did you get any of those responses or any embarrassments like that?
I would say early on in outlining my vision, especially with me coming to grips on how do I best define what our overall purpose and ethos is in order to communicate that out along that discovery process while trying to build something. Yeah, there was a lot of skepticism from people, and there's still skepticism. I mean, coffee is the second highest commodity beverage behind water. in the U.S. Right? Let's be real here. I mean, it's a locally.
Some people think they're the same thing.
I mean, yeah, some days I do too. But it's a locally accessible product in coffee shops, and it's not new to America. So this is just a very hard reality. I think one of the biggest vantage points we have as a brand is how do we take what we already talked about, specialty coffee, and allow everyday consumers to not have to go out of their way to access and learn about specialty coffee, but for a better specialty coffee experience to be accessible in places they shop, grocery stores, mass retail stores. So allowing those individuals to build a bigger opportunity for, when you think about the natural products space in retail, for example, that started out with there's a very small section, right? Or you go to a retailer that's very dedicated to it. But if you go back in the day with Target, it wasn't a big dedication to this.
No,
Walmart, that wasn't a big dedication to this.
Right.
The consumer education, the consumer awareness of created the bandwidth for retailers to build that destination out further. And so we're on a longer path, a longer journey, but it's not just about the social impact piece. It's about making what is a delicacy of coffee more accessible for people in everyday space, and for them to learn about it too, to be able to have that quality comparable wine experience from coffee as well.
And we're going to get into the social, for those wondering, what's the social thing that he keeps talking about? We're absolutely going to get into that. But first, because you keep dropping that, and people are probably wondering, what is he talking about? Ask him about that. Ask him about that. We're going to ask about that.
Sure.
So don't worry. We're going to get there. But are there any other difficulties or failures that kind of surprised you along this path? Because I love there are a lot of entrepreneurs like yourself that are kind of slaying dragons right now. They're in the trenches, they're working on stuff, and they're like, this is never going to work. So they just assume that people like you just snapped your fingers and everything happened. Right. So are there any other dragons you had to slay along the way, or surprising difficulties that you ran into?
The answer is yes. I'm trying to quickly prioritize the magnitude of them. Again, being still relatively a startup, and pursuing a scalable model in a competitive space, there's a lot of changing the engine while driving down the highway, while also trying to finance building infrastructure to do so. And so it's your left foot can't step too far ahead of your right foot, and that's literally the everyday art of what we're doing as we continue to build awareness for consumers and our clients as retailers, but making sure we don't overstep, but also don't take too long for the right foot to catch up to the left foot. Otherwise, we end up in this stuck place as a startup trying to compete at a scalable space. And so that's just literally the everyday art that we live and breathe. So being 2 years in, almost 2 years in, and being in the middle of the journey, I would say that's the act of what we're doing is the difficult stuff. Is how do we scale this bad boy without sprinting too fast, but also without building the infrastructure to stay on pace at the same time.
And for anybody listening, I would caution you, there's a very little chance you listening right now are going to get to your final goals or get national distribution if you're a product in like under 2 years. That's not a normal thing. You just, for whatever reason, you just absolutely crushed it. So I just want to send the message to anybody listening. You guys have had unbelievable success very quickly. So if you're working on your own journey, don't be discouraged if 2 years comes around and you're not to where Pernell is or Blk Bold is. You guys have obviously done very well. One of the things you talk a lot about is education. Mm-hmm. And that really gets tossed around a lot today with very little thought. Educate your consumers, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you guys do that very, very well. So what is the right way to educate and communicate, especially with these giant retailers like a Target? Is there any pitch advice?
Pitch advice.
Or just general education, communication advice?
I tell any entrepreneur is that, especially before they make the leap, is they need to master their competitive landscape, and they have to know themselves and their skill set within that competitive landscape. So if you have a masterful skill that can allow you to win within the landscape that you have defined, then it's a matter of, one, allowing the market to confirm you some runway, but then that's also the education and the onboarding you do to your key constituents, your key clients. And so I can't pitch you if I don't fully understand the competitive landscape, because if I'm pitching you, you may know it better than me.
Sure.
But if your lens on what the existing landscape is prior to engaging with me with a masterful value add to that, it helps shift what is possible within that space. And then you become a validator of and or educator of if it's not quite the case. And so there's definitely a give and take in any prospecting that you do give. In pitching, I would say one of the most masterful things is, because you're going to have a lot of pitches, is to make sure you're taking away the subtle education points that you're getting from the person on the other side of the table, and the not so subtle ones as well. So you're always going to be refining. So you want to get some value from the person that you're pitching to, not just the award, not just the shiny penny at the end, because you're never going to fully be right.
Yeah.
You're never going to fully be right. It's just a matter of how do you take where you are, bring on key partners, clients in particular, that are with you on the journey that you're currently at, but also can allow for you to continue to refine where you're going.
I don't want anybody listening to miss what you just said. You glossed over it as if it's this common thing that people know how to do.
Okay.
But it's a really, really good skill. It's maybe one you develop, maybe one that's just natural to you. But you mentioned something very key. Listen to what people say when you're actually pitching them. Hear how they react. Watch. I would even go further to say, and you probably do this, watch their faces. Mm-hmm. You know, what did you say that they reacted to negatively? They squirmed. I think a lot of people, and this is one thing we talk on the Justin Brady Show a lot, is listening tactics. Make sure you're an expert listener. And so I want to point out the fact that you just mentioned that, and I don't want people to miss it. Listening, especially in that pitch environment, it sounds like you used a lot of that unspoken data to help you adjust your pitch for future retailers. Would that be safe to say?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. And not every client is the same. You definitely have to understand.
That's important.
If you have a product that is relevant to multiple prospects, you have to understand how do they win against their competition, which is going to be your field of prospects. And that allows for you to, one, learn more about their feedback and take it for the right level of value.
Right.
Right, because they may be giving you feedback from their vantage point, not to, hey, this is what you should do better, more so than this is what I need.
Yeah.
So if you want to do a better job pitching me, you have to service this more so than them saying, hey, you got to change your business overall if you want to win your overall landscape. So it's the give and take of understanding who you're in, who's on the other side of the table, so you can process their feedback appropriately.
Right. And that's key too, because not all feedback's good feedback. You do have to take it all, judge what's, some of it's going to be tossed out, no matter who's on the other side of the table, no matter if they're an expert or not. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the most prolific experts in the world make embarrassing mistakes. So you do have to take all feedback, judge it for what it is, throw out what you don't think you can use, internalize what you think you can. Yep. But I think the listening strategies you're explaining are some of the most undervalued, but also most important traits when you're communicating with other people. Mm-hmm. How did you achieve, I'm going to make some guesses. I have some guesses in my head based on your story so far, but how did you get national distribution so quickly? Some companies it takes 4 or 5 years to ever get there. How did you do that?
So great point on that intro. I would say the other piece is there's a lot of brands that they intro as a company by way of national distribution. And so they have no consumer landscape as well. They build it within their competitive landscape that they exist for.
Now, are these just extremely well-connected, well-funded entities?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't really heard that story from bootstrap brands. So when you preface it that way, yes, you are spot on. I would say for us, again, this is a vantage point that I have from understanding the landscape that we're pursuing. Spent 10 years on every angle in regards to retailer distribution. And then my business partner has spent his entire career in regards to philanthropy and charitable fundraising. And so when we look at, the business model as a very authentic, very compelling, very strong foundation. But then when you look at the product competitive landscape, it's still woefully underdeveloped. And that's the hard reality of when you look at Target and the aisles of Target. You think about Stumptown, you think about counterculture, some of the, which sounds funny, the legacy specialty coffee brands that exist, they're still really new to retailer distro. Right? Their business models were not built for retailer distribution first. It's a complementary opportunity for them to drive their brand and their awareness. They're built as wholesalers to support coffee shops and their businesses. And so for us, we're looking at this from how do we disrupt retailer distribution first,
right?
And how do we fill in those gaps so we don't have a coffee shop? The intentionality for that is less overhead and more focus on what the model is that we have, which is allowing everyday consumers to have access to specialty coffee where they shop, their grocery list, right? And allow them to extend their social impact footprint. And so we didn't leave it up to just us to be the validators of that. So for those that aren't as familiar with B Corp certification, it is a third party that certifies businesses as, it's called gold standard for valuing your shareholders as equally as your stakeholders. And that's a third party validation that we received pretty early. B Corp pending because we weren't a year old, and it's a year old. Yep, and they do a post audit on are you doing what you say you're doing, and so they give you a little bit more runway if you're less than a year old when you get that, but it's to validate to your stakeholders that hey, they're really walking the walk on what they're saying. They need a little bit more time, but they're walking the walk on
so
what they're saying.
So for someone who has no idea what that even means, what is a B Corp? How do you get that status, and why does it even matter? For
sure. And so I just to throw some examples out there. When you think of Tom's Shoes, when you think of Warby Parker, when you think of Patagonia, you think of Ben & Jerry's, these are all brands that are in retail, packaged goods in particular, that they're not, screaming from a megaphone of what their impact model is. And so they allow B Corp as a unifying, let's call it logo or status, to validate to constituents that, hey, they are better for business, better for impact as well. And
this is a social impact thing you've been indicating.
Yes, exactly. And so one of B Corp's models is kind of better for the world. Right? For-profit businesses are better for the world because they're not just valuing the bottom line.
Right.
And so that, I would say, one of the most important things of receiving B Corp certification is that validation to everyday consumers. Man, they vote every day, and we've seen nothing but data that says that they want their brands to stand for more than just transacting with them.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot difference when there's a local business that you understand that, the only way for them to be viable is to just focus on transacting, but it's from an authentic place. When there's brands that you don't, packaged goods brands in particular, that don't have that personal identity or personal connection, you want to know that they stand for more literally than just what you're consuming.
Right. And the research shows people will pay more for that.
Most definitely. And also because B Corp in particular shows transparency of the impact that these businesses and brands have.
Key.
So it's not just saying, hey, we do this. It's a matter of having assessments that show it and that score it as well. So you asked, what's the process of getting there? I gave a brief summary of us being less than a year, but there's essentially a pretty arduous assessment that kind of peels back the onion on everything from your environmental impact to your equity with your how you treat and how you compensate your employees.
Wow.
To your local community impact, as well as how you scorecard transparency of your impact. So there's many different spectrums that you have to, again, be very transparent with them on in order for you to fall within a certain score to be qualified to receive the certification. But then their team literally does an audit to validate if that's true, if you have these policies in place, so on and so forth. So
is a B Corp like an independent kind of entity? It's like a nonprofit organization in and of itself. It's not linked to any other group. They maintain their independence, and they basically stake their own reputation on the fact that all these entities, all these B Corp entities, are in fact holding up what they say they're supposed to do.
Correct. And the only integrity they have is to make sure that they are auditing approprially.
Right. Because if they're not, their whole model's gone.
Exactly. That's
fascinating.
Exactly.
One of my listeners, Mike, wanted to know, because I give the opportunity to any of my listeners because this is pre-recorded. So we send our email list and we say, hey, here's our guest who wants to ask questions. And people only on the list get that. So if you're listening and you want access to that, JustinKBrady.com/access. You can sign yourself up right there. I'll send you the same emails. Getting your product distributed by Target is a tremendous win, but how do you lower dependency on one big retailer like Target? Where will you look for your next distribution partner, or do you have a different strategy to enlarge your access to more customers? And I admit this is one of my questions too. It's a good question.
Yep. So one of the things is in regards to Target as well. I got a little long-winded in regards to B Corp, but one of the great partnership alignment opportunities with Target is their value of social impact as well as B Corp businesses.
Okay.
They've had a lot of let's call it early a head start on other retailers on B Corp businesses that truly stand for social impact across the gambit. And so us being an emerging brand within a space that doesn't have emerging founder-based brands that also are living in modern day fact-based social impact things was very appealing for them as well.
Sure.
Especially in
that's good.
Especially in the national markets that we have launched in, because it's a norm for a lot of those markets. And so to give them access on, again, an everyday product that now is giving them impact within their communities was a huge key
it
element.
Impacts communities, and people want to impact communities, therefore they'll pay more. So it's a money thing and a community thing. It's a double win, and they're looking for those entities.
While they build out specialty coffee in their stores so they can stop losing share to coffee shops.
That's interesting.
Right, exactly.
There's some little insider information.
Exactly. And so that's the same dynamic when it comes to Mike's question on lowering dependency on Target. And so retailer shelf distribution and the value proposition that they have with not losing share to their local coffee shops, especially in specialty coffee, which is a premium coffee segment on a product that has a delicacy to it, just doesn't have the education gap, allows for retailers that prioritize building their space out to see their bottom line benefit as well. And so for us being based in Des Moines, I mean, we have an ideal list, whether it's Whole Foods Regional, which we're actively working on and prospecting, as well as Hy-Vee, which is in our backyard. I mean,
Hy-Vee is also based out of Des Moines. Yeah, you could just go knock on their door. Have you tried that yet? In process. And so, that's our key go-to-market landscape is retailer distribution. But and that's lowering dependency on just Target, but lowering dependency on retailer distribution. We very much service coffee shops. We very much service restaurants. We very much service co-working spaces and offices. So we're a wholesaler. We roast in-house. So we build menus for our clients and we wholesale to whatever their need is. And so the one thing I would say is, and this may open up another can of worms, but the one thing I would say is we have not adopted the K-Cup model, which is about 90% of single serve. Seriously?
Yeah, it's about 90% of the single serve market. So they have a foothold, let's be clear. But
I'm sorry, that's gross.
But yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of flaws that come with that.
Plastic.
Plastic.
Coffee tastes like plastic.
Well, that it's not about quality.
You don't have to bash it. I will. No. I'll do that myself.
Hey, you can have at it. But just from a proposition standpoint, it's not about quality. It's about convenience. Truly about convenience. And the price point shows that the clunkiness of the machine, you can't have it on the go, and then also the lack of recyclability of the components is very negative for the environment. So we have partnered with a co-packer that has a single serve that is called Steeped Coffee. I believe we talked about this, Justin. It's called Steeped Coffee. It's essentially coffee in a tea sachet, but it has they're all individually wrapped in a foil that's fully compostable, and the foil it's nitro filled, and so that removes all the oxygen that allows this ground coffee to stay fresh as long as possible.
Coffee bags are nitro filled, right? I don't think most people, well, at least some of them are.
Well, it depends on the integrity of the brand. Yes. So not all of them nitro fill their bags, but it definitely
people cutting corners out there.
Yeah. It definitely extends the shelf life of anytime you remove oxygen out of a sealed bag for something that's a consumable, like a bag of chips, it stays fresh almost for a way longer time frame, but essentially up to the point that you're ready to consume it. So You just have to add hot water to ours, and it changes the game on what modern single serve looks like. That's better for the planet
absolutely
and
does.
better quality.
And it is really good. I mean, you did hand me one of those to try, and I was kind of like, this is tea. Like, this is how we don't do coffee this way, Pernell. I'm not sure where you get your coffee degree, but this isn't how we do it. And then I tried it, and it was fantastic. It blew me. I was like, gosh darn it, this is pretty darn good. Yeah, it's super smart.
The coolest thing, the coolest thing for me is when I first discovered this, when I first discovered our co-packer, I couldn't get it out of my mind, especially when I first got on a plane. I'm like, oh man, I just need a steeped coffee pack, because it's literally like having...
Because they give you hot water, yeah.
They give you hot water, and it's literally like having a fresh brew cup of coffee out of your favorite coffee shop.
Yeah,
in particular,
it's
your favorite
unbelievable.
specialty coffee shop.
Yeah,
right? And so changes the whole quality aspect of it.
I just got on a flight from United, and this is something they need. Like they, because their airline coffee is terrible, and they brag about this is brewed, but I'm like, come on, this stuff's garbage. They need that bad. There's so many markets. I'm sure you don't have time to get to all of them. Kent wanted to know, and you answered a lot of this already, so I'm not going to ask the full length of his question. But where do you get your beans? How do you do that? Are there just wholesalers and distributors that you can work through, or? Oh man,
there's an entire industry in regards to green coffee, which is pre-roasted coffee, basically. And for us, especially as starting up, we have to understand who are the big guys and what does their assortment looks like, so we can have consistent access to.
Sure.
Fair trade is a very key aspect of us, communicating the integrity of what we're sourcing, but also direct trade. And so we started with a couple of the big importers in the U.S., and then we've added on a few micro importers that are the countries that they source is the heartbeat of why they do what they do, and that speaks very closely to us. And so we have a importer that is out of Baltimore, that's Ethiopian, that does some of the best high quality coffee sourcing across Africa, as well as Sumatra and South America. And he's the passion of what he has and the intimacy of who he's sourcing from, and the integrity of that speaks very closely. We have a Honduran importer that is from Honduras and is based out of Minneapolis, and he's focused on building his family's business and has built so much more across Honduras as well. And so the intimacy and the impact they have on the ground and their purpose speaks very closely to us. And so we continue to bring on micro importers that are an extension of what we believe business and the heartbeat of how business should be done. And we'll continue to do that. So the quality of what they have access to, but their commitment to helping build those farmers' portfolios and make them better every day is a big piece of how and who we partner with.
Pernell Cezar, the co-founder of Blk Bold Coffee, and I'm a Blk Bold drinker after I met you, and my word, it's delicious. And one of the things I want to point out is some people think like the specialty coffees are the bitter fruit and because it's sour, because my wife doesn't like that flavor.
Yep.
And it's not all that way. You have different roasts, and so when I was like, "Oh, I want to use this stuff. It's more premium," she's like, "I don't like the sour taste. I don't like that thing." And I'm like, "Oh," and so we got like the darker roast, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like has like a caramel, like a silky depth to it. It's so fantastic." So there are a bunch of different roasts you guys have that you're absolutely knocking out of the park. If people listening want to go buy your coffee, or we have a lot of impressive movers and shakers that listen to this that I hear from, if people want to source your coffee in their stores or their chains or whatever, how do they do that? How do they reach out?
Most definitely. So for a direct conversation on sourcing, I would just say hit me up. It's Pernell, Pernell at blkandbold.com. And then in addition to that, you can find our products at Target stores. I would say check out our blkandbold.com store locator to make sure that you're not wasting too much time out of your day trying to find it. And then Target.com. We're also in the Des Moines area Price Choppers, and as well as Amazon.com, and I guess our own blkandbold.com.
Thank you so much for coming in here.
Thank you, Justin. Much appreciated, man.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.